All right, we are back, and it's been, several weeks. How's it going, David?
Hey, pretty good. How are you, Dave?
I am doing a lot better than I was a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
I was mad. I was really mad. Ooh, yeah.
David's mad about what? No, I'm the mad David. You're the common uh reserve Dave. Always
Yeah, I mean, I've calmed down a lot since several weeks ago, so
right.
this isn't gonna be a rant or anything. We
Well, I'm
were
mad
gonna
now
do a
because I have to
rant,
be
and we
on
were gonna
camera.
have that the beeper button going because
You
it was gonna be all out.
you told me you're going to be on camera live by yourself. Like what? I thought. Wait a minute. No, I'm the mad one.
No,
I
I
had
was gonna
things to
have you
do.
there. It was just like I'm gonna go on the rant. So it's like,
All
uh,
right. I'll be the voice of reason today. I'll be the voice of reason.
yeah. It's usually my job. I'm the one that's like, hey, let's think this one,
But I
right?
do agree with you. I do agree with you what we're going to talk about. I do agree with you, but not quite as passionately as as our viewers and listeners will hear and see.
Well, like I said, it's gonna be a lot more calmer than it was gonna be because, like I said, I was upset. I was fuming. What we're talking about today is something that we've talked about. We've mentioned before several
Right.
times is CGI.
CGI,
And
computer generated images.
several weeks ago, Disney Plus released the Daredevil Born Again series, which they're picking up from Netflix. It's probably about 10 years ago now since Netflix started. Netflix had 3 seasons of the Daredevil and then like an Avengers type show that had Daredevil in it. So basically 4 seasons with the
Mhm.
character in there. And it was really well done. They used very little CGI. Disney Plus takes it over. They release it, and the first 15 minutes of the show had so much horrible CGI, unnecessary CGI. I mean, just running on rooftops. It's like, oh, let's make the CGI. It's like you can see the character bending, in that rubber style. You have a fight scene that's in a bunch of smoke, and smoke is CGI. You can see the characters in the smoke moving like rubber guys. It's like, oh my, it's like it just made my brain hurt and made me so mad that I watched 4 years of this character being done naturally by stuntmen, by the
Right.
actors themselves doing all this. And they probably used, I mean, they probably used a whole lot of less money. Their budget was probably a whole lot less what Disney throws into this.
Right.
And they get better visuals.
Right.
And it made me so mad because that's how everything has been lately. Down from, I mean, look at the last Indiana Jones, right? You know, you had what Last Crusade was how many years ago? Late 90s.
Right.
So
Been
over
a long
30
time.
years ago, they had a train sequence. They had River Phoenix, doing, an actors on a train and doing
Mhm.
the sequence. Couple of years ago, Dial of Destiny. Yeah, I understand. Harrison Ford is 80 years old, but this was in a flashback and they de-aged him. So it
Mhm.
probably wasn't even him on top of this moving train. All
Right.
that was CGI.
Really.
So, I mean, there, to me, and this is going to be probably the title of this episode is like, Hollywood has lost the magic.
Those are
You
good. Yeah.
Filmmakers, in some sense, they're illusionists. They're magicians. They're supposed to be tricking you into thinking that this is real. This is possible, right? Taking the impossible and making it seem possible.
You're right.
And there's still some people that do that. We still have good storytellers that can tell a story visually, but the people that can actually take something and make the impossible happen. Like the Kubricks, like The Shining. There was a lot of impossible things happening in The Shining,
Hmm.
right? But he made it so realistic that you believe it. All that blood
Right.
coming out, the The elevator, that was all liquid coming down, that was dyed red, things were done practically, it's things like, nowadays the only equivalent to that extent, that keeps that magic alive, would be someone like, Christopher Nolan, who can take a simple story like the creation of the atomic bomb in Oppenheimer
Mhm.
and make it into a visually stunning and all, you're just astonished. You can't, the imagery is great, dealing with, the particles and fusion happening on screen, and it doesn't look cheesy. It looks like, wow, it's like how they do that,
Well,
right?
with that, what you just said there, I mean, that's something that you can't replicate. Yeah, it has to be that. So, but it's, you know what I'm saying, with the stunts and stuff like that, you can do with people with imagining what fusion looks. So there's a reason to use it. But like you're saying, all these actors are out of jobs and they're not. I don't know. I understand what you're
Some
saying.
people, some people, I mean, they never even got the credit that they deserve for doing what they do because it's
Right.
very dangerous. They get light on fire, they get blown up. I mean, they jump from high, really high points, with just a cord, to protect them. Sometimes it's just an airbag that they had to hit.
Hmm.
So it's like they never got credit to begin with, and now they're just being, you know, put away with. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll just put the CGI character in there,
Right.
and the CGI character doesn't move like a human. So it's another thing that takes us out of the
This is
moment, makes
yeah,
us
suspension.
realize that this is completely fake.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite of the point that we're supposed to be doing is like as filmmakers, we're supposed to help the audience suspend their disbelief. It is not up to the audience to solely suspend their disbelief and say this is not possible.
Right. Right.
It
They don't
is,
go into it with saying, "I'm not going to believe anything I'm going to see." Right. Yeah. So they have to be told. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you go to a magic show, it's like magic's not real.
Right.
So you're going to have to suspend your belief that if you see something and you don't know how it was done, it's like, wow, you get amazed, right? It's like, I don't know how that was done. And that's the way when you see a movie, you should say it. That's how what that thing is. Like, I don't know how they did that. It could be real, right?
Right.
But when you see bad CGI, and all this CGI just everywhere, it's like I know how they did that. It's
Hmm.
CGI.
CGI.
It's
Right.
not even done well.
Right.
Because it's been what 30 years since Jurassic Park, and that was probably like the first moment when people realized that anything was possible to see on screen now.
Hmm.
It's like so some of the CGI doesn't hold up to 4K nowadays, you know but if you go and watch that scene where the T-Rex comes out and attacks the Jeeps,
Hmm.
so it's like that first moment we actually get eyes on the T-Rex. There was all that anticipation. Spielberg is good on that. He learned that from Jaws.
Right.
Less is more. You saw
Right.
very little of that shark, so it didn't matter if that mechanical shark looked like crap and didn't look like a real shark.
Right.
Less is more. A little bit of you show, you see it. But in Jurassic Park, I dare you to watch that scene and say, okay, what part of that scene when is the dinosaur animatronic and when is it CGI? You're not going to be able to tell.
Very true. Right.
And that is the magic that is missing nowadays with CGI.
Right. Well, yeah, look, they're using their CGI to fill in what the animatronics or the actors couldn't do, which is understandable. But to replace an entire industry, a workforce, and that comes down to greed of those corporations. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. It's it's not saving money. I think it's greed. These
I mean, I
corporations.
think the goal originally was like, oh, it would save money.
Right.
You
But
know,
now
because
I think, but it's turned into greed now
yeah,
because they can do so much and gets and recoups, and it's not going to stop until people stop going to the movies, which people are not going to stop going to the movies because they need to be entertained. So it's a catch 22. It's not going to stop because people aren't going to stop. So it just
I
a
mean, the
never ending
biggest cost in
story.
a movie is people.
Say
You
again?
know, and probably, you know, I mean, a third or at least a quarter of the film is probably the actors. I mean,
Right.
actors get paid quite a bit of money, you know, especially if they're A-listers or something like that. Um, but if you're not dealing with A-listers and you're dealing with, you know, some relatively unknowns, and, you know, before they break out, you know, crew and, you know, above the line people and below the line people, you know, that all that adds up, and that's true. Um, but you know, CGI, it's not cheap.
No.
And the only reason why I think at the beginning, and you know, it's changed a little bit. You know, CGI before it, you know, all these studios started going corporatization, taking over. It's like they have their own basically house of CGI artists,
Hmm.
right? So it's like you know, several years ago, there was just so many CGI studios that were popping up. If you looked at like the movie credits, you know, movies were being done by multiple visual studio houses, right?
Right.
And these guys, well, there were so many of them, they kept on underbidding each other. It's like construction. You know, those construction people, there's so many construction places, is like, well, we'll do it for this. We'll do it for this amount. We'll do it for this amount. Well, they start underbidding so much that they're not going to make enough money to actually do what they need to do in the matter of time they have.
Right.
And these excuses that, you know, everyone has, and you've heard the term where it's like, you know, what, excuses are like assholes. Everyone's got one, right?
Right.
And there's so many of them. You know, it's like, well, it's like, oh, we didn't have enough time. You know, then they had like, you know, they changed shots, and we had to like start a rework on a shot all over again, and we had to get, you know, all the work that we did on this. You know, we had to, you know, scrap that because they changed things, right? And it's like, yeah, that's bad in the studio, but you know the studio is going to do that. You know this happens. You
Hmm.
can't go in there. There is no one except for probably like, you know, Christopher Nolan, where everything is planned out to the T, where it's like you don't have to worry. As soon as it gets in the hands of you know, the CGI artists, they know exactly what they're going to have to do, and this is going to have, you know, nothing's going to change.
Right.
All that planning and all that, you know, details have been meticulously, you know, set. But if it's Disney, you got to believe Disney's going to show this product and this film to an audience, and they're going to want to like make a whole bunch of changes.
Hmm.
So yeah, you know, things that, you know, the CGI artists were working on are going to get scrapped, and they're going to have to like do something different. It's like
Yeah.
that is a known, that is a given, that these subpar filmmakers, you know, that's all I can just tell them about it, because
Right.
they're not doing what, you know, they planned. They don't have every detail, you know, known, and worried. You know, and this is how, like, you know, they lost their magic, where it's like if you're a magician, what happens if things just start falling out of your pockets up on stage? You know, your
Right.
cards are just falling out, or tubes are poking out of your suit, and it's like
Right.
all your tricks are being seen, you know, and you're not organized. It's like, you
Hmm.
know, for a magician, an illusionist to completely astound somebody and make them believe in magic, everything has to go right. Every little detail has to go right, or we see behind the curtain and we know it's fake.
Hmm.
And so it's like, yeah, I mean, these studio houses, the visual studio houses got to know that. So stop underbidding on it. At some point, you're going to have to say, it's like that amount of money is not worth what what's going to go on, because we're not going to be able to put out that product.
Hmm.
Because if you put out a subpar product, then I mean, are you going to get a job ever again?
Hmm.
You know, I
No.
wouldn't hire some of these CGI studios that put out in some of these movies. It's like, man, you know, I don't care what your responses are. At some point, your manager should have said, like, with this amount of money, I can't pay enough artists for the time period that it takes.
Yeah, to do it effectively and good, right? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those are the people that blame. I don't really blame the actual, artists, because these artists with the technology and the tools that we have nowadays, we can output something even better than what we saw in Jurassic Park,
Hmm.
and 30 years ago. It's only gotten better over the years.
Right.
But the management of it and the way that it's handled, through that, it's like back in the day, it's like everything was just ILM, and they had the gold standard where it's like less is more.
Hmm.
We know we can do amazing things, but at a certain point, the strings are going to be seen.
Hmm.
The tricks are going to be revealed. But if we do, instead of 15 minutes of a CGI scene, we only do 5 minutes of a CGI scene,
Right.
it's going to be way more believable.
Yeah.
And they understood that. Nowadays, they're, like I said, I mean, it's used as a crutch. We heard fix it in post before even CGI happened, right? Before CGI, this was even 30 years ago, people were saying, we'll fix it in post.
Hmm.
Nowadays, anything can be fixed in post. I mean, look at AI and deep fake. In 30 more years, you know, we'll be able to replicate any scene that we want. And it almost just looks like anything. So I mean, it's going that way.
Well, yeah, what's here now, right? I mean, just
Yeah,
the
but
simple
here and now, it's like we've seen so much CGI that we know what it looks like compared to reality.
hmm.
And just that laziness of saying we'll fix it in post, it's like that it's just another one of those things where it's like, you're losing that magic.
Hmm.
Fix it in that camera. Do something creatively in that camera on set so you don't have to fix in post.
Right.
So when your key CGI scenes come up, people are going to be amazed instead of watching subpar CGI for a whole bunch of times. And then when your big CGI moment comes up, people aren't jaded from what they've already seen.
Well, why do we have to have all this? Why are we producing all these huge tentpole movies that need all the CGI instead of going back to simple stories? So that it's a hard question because that's what people want to see. They want to see the big explosions and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
and even
you-
with these tempo things, I mean, go look at like Iron Man 1. Iron
Mhm.
Man 1 was an actual Marvel movie. It was before
Right.
Disney owned it. You go to watch Iron Man 1 and the CGI is going to look so much better than the later movies when Disney started taking over. The suit was sometimes practical, sometimes CGI, but the blending of it was great. It looked great. It looked believable. And yeah, they kind of changed the suit later on where there's a running theme nowadays, in the Marvel movies where everyone's got like that nanotech, suit. So it just like appears on people, right? It's like, okay,
Right.
that's completely CGI.
Right.
You know that because it doesn't exist. But you go back and look at that Iron Man 1, you know, and you look at the moment where Robert Downey Jr.'s face shows up and it's like the helmet opens. Well, we can tell that's a real helmet.
Hmm.
We are not taken out in that suspension of belief. Actually, that suspension of belief is more real because
Yeah,
it's like,
confirmed.
oh,
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. is actually in a suit. He's got to be
Right.
really hot. That's going to be really uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's why he probably got the money he got paid. It's like, why are we paying all these people all this money for just wearing dots on their
Right.
face?
Right.
It's like you need to take a pay cut for that.
Right.
Because you have people playing Batman over here in a full latex suit, or Tom Holland that plays Spider-Man. It's like, well, to go to the bathroom, he's going to need 15 minutes just to get out of that suit.
Right.
It's like, okay, that deserves more money. Wearing just a 3D track suit with some dots on there, no, it's like, no, we
Right.
can pay Andy Serkis to do it, and we can see what he did with, like, King Kong and Planet of the Apes. So it's like, well, why even need the actors doing that performance?
Right.
Let's just get a 3D motion capture person doing it, who actually knows how to actually move in there and can make these rubber characters not move like rubber.
Have you seen those Boston Dynamic robots? They're
Yeah,
freaky.
yes, those
You
guys are doing like somersaults and stuff.
right, scary. Holy, I mean, those are guys are the well, guys. Those robots are amazing.
Oh,
Just use those.
they'll be guys eventually. We're gonna be putting them,
That's
and they're gonna
scary.
give them some pronouns and stuff, and they're gonna go to work. All right, let's take
That's
a little break now, and we'll finish up our talk after we come back. And we are back.
I am not a robot. So you can see the terrible CGI. My I have no
Yeah,
lighting
but
today.
that's doing live, and that's what just a simple webcam.
Right.
These guys have.
Oh look at that! Look at the shadow change. I'm reflecting the light of my hand. See that?
That's better than some CGI we've seen.
Right. Here
And
come the cat and dog. I didn't tell reviewers we have a cat and dog now. Charlie and Storm. They're not CGI.
even simple CGI is starting to look terrible. I was watching on Amazon the show Reacher. They're in season 3. I was watching the last episode, and it was just a simple scene where they were doing kind of like a meetup in outside, well lit. It was at, like, kind of deserty kind of place, and you can tell where it's like, well, something happened, and Hall's shot was basically in a studio. I mean,
Really?
first of all, the lighting wasn't matching the scene. I mean, you're in a well lit, orange light, and all of a sudden you cut to him. It's like, he's got like just a little light there. His face is all dark. It's like, man, you didn't match the scene's light at all.
Really?
But there's that kind of, like, the glow around him, the blur around him, where it's like, they feathered the edge of the mask,
Right.
so hard around him that it's like, you just told, he just pops from the screen. It's like he's not there. He's like, I understand why you have to do this, but you know, people were doing this exact thing way better 30 years ago.
Right.
So, relying on that CGI, it's like, yeah, you got to fix it in post, but it's like, man, also fix the shot. Don't show that full body shot of him, you know, if you're going to have to do this, because, all that masking, and if you're not going to do all that masking properly and put that time and effort to do it, it's going to look fake. And then you're taking people out of that. And then you're wondering, it's like, why? It's like, just think of something creatively to get around this, push in on him. You don't have to use that long body shot of him. Just use his face, use his head, and then they had the OTS. It's like, use more of the OTS. you
Right.
know, I couldn't tell if that OTS was actually the right actor. It could have been like a different actor. Sometimes that's done,
Stand right. Stand in or
stand in
something.
and stuff
Right.
like that. So it's like, we've been doing tricks. We've been magicians for years, and
Right.
now we're not caring about that. The suspension of disbelief these people are putting completely onto the audience. It's like they
Mhm.
don't care anymore. And I get it, where there's people that they're probably fed up with, like, this superhero era, right? Where it, a lot of people never believed that these superhero movies were real films to begin with,
Yeah.
you know. But things. had bled over. It's not just a superhero genre. I mean, if anything, I would say it kind of started with Fast and Furious. I mean, but even the first couple of Fast and Furious, they were doing with very little CGI. Stuntmen driving actual cars
Mhm.
actually blowing up, cars doing stunts.
With
But if you
the
look at,
cost,
yeah,
just the cost, and the lot. I mean,
I mean,
look
I
what
don't
happened.
think.
That what the guy that got killed. What the Paul? I mean, he was just that
I
was part of
mean, he died, not doing the film. He was just driving,
well,
going too fast and lost control, and that was
well,
honestly,
exactly. Life can imitate life art, or art imitating life.
yeah.
It's just
But
that's what happens, and that's why they don't, and that's why they do it. But
I mean, that's what stuntmen get paid to do that. Stuntmen have been driving cars and they've been exploding and flipping
but the people
for
want more and more, David.
decades,
They're not
decades. Mad
satisfied with
Max,
status quo.
you know,
People want more, so they want
that's
more, so
what they
they
got.
crank out
That's what
more.
they want to do. I
Hmm?
mean, that's what the stuntmen want to do. They want to do
Right,
this stuff.
but it's not enough for to satisfy the needs of the audience. If it's
Mm, no, no.
don't forget,
I think it is.
30 years ago, 1-year-olds were one. Now the 30, they're
I mean, come
changing
on, but
views,
you
points of
look at
view.
the last Fast and Furious, I don't know, Fast 10 or Fast 12, whoever they're on. It's like they're at some point, it's like, yeah, create a new story.
Right,
Because like you said, you have to kind of one up each time you go up. It's like, oh, what are we gonna do this time? We have to go do this time,
right,
you know? And eventually it's like, oh, we're gonna drive a car in space. It's like, okay, yeah, you can't do that in reality. You're gonna have to do that with CGI, you
right.
know. Um, but do something else. It's like if you gotta like if your whole movie is nothing but CGI, but it started and the fans that came from the first time for the reality, the feels of the car, that the stuff that's happening is going on is could be possible, that and now you've completely done away with that. People are going to get jaded, people are going to get tired. I mean, the Fast and Furious franchise is not making as much money as it used to,
Right.
and at some point, we're just gonna let CGI take over. And it's like if the whole movie is CGI, it can be done well.
Hmm.
But if you're mixing it with reality, we aren't there yet. It probably will never be there, until AI does it. If AI, once AI starts doing things, they're gonna have the meticulous processes and detail oriented that they can actually make something real, right?
Yeah, but people going to. I wouldn't watch a movie. I mean, I'd watch it for the one time, and it's what are we going to do? Replace everything with it? I mean,
I
I don't.
mean, humans can still write the story,
They don't need to write it. Which I showed what AI did to Kevin.
but like I said, yeah, they don't need to write it, but they could still write it. They could still storyboard and stuff like that. And
Right.
eventually, AI can take all this, the story, the storyboard, and they would be able to create something, and it would look seamless, right? And they wouldn't even have to do, eventually, it's like, well, it would just be that kind of like that fix and post, where it's like, I need this person to move this way instead of that way, or do something that needs to be fixed, and the AI would be able to fix it because they have all that information from the actual screen that they're just going to create more images from that, right? And you know, AI is going to be the solving factor of CGI. CGI will not break the uncanny factor until AI does it. Humans, like I said, it's going to take us too much time to make it look actually perfect.
Right.
And the way movies, the producers that make these movies nowadays, that they don't do their job properly to give these people enough time, and probably money. The money is probably on the studio side, the actual CGI studio side, where it's like, they're undercutting everybody so hard that they just take this much money. Someone needs to say, it's like, that's not enough money. This is how much it's going to cost.
Uh-huh.
And until they start actually putting out the amount of, like, money per time, and someone's willing to pay that to get good value, and people actually got to go see the film. Films aren't making money. What's the last one that just came out? Snow White, and they
It's about
spent like
that.
how much money on that? It was like up to like 330 million. That's
That's
like
one with the girl that
that's
pays
pre
calls all
PR.
girl. Yeah,
So PR is like what, 50% to the same amount that your budget is.
yeah.
And this film will probably do well with kids, because I heard it's got a lot of like good, oh, little cute animal come up, right? And that's what kids like. So the kids will like the cute animals that come up, and there's a lot of that. So it'll probably get like 400 million at the box office. That's not enough to actually break even.
No, what kind
So
of profit?
these movies aren't even making money, but they're still churning them out. And they're still spending a ridiculous amount of money. Go back. How many Snow Whites have we had made in the past? I
Bunch.
guarantee you they didn't spend more than 200 million on those, and they still made more money probably than this Snow White. So yeah, I mean, we got a problem. These producers and these directors that used to be magicians. They used to have that magic of filmmaking. They are corporate stooges
Right.
nowadays.
Well, it's follow the money. That's all it is. It's the money and advertising dollars.
Yeah.
It's the sad state of affair that we're in.
I mean, these directors, yeah, they get a paycheck. And at this point, it's like, if you're working at Disney, just take your money and go. It's like, who cares? It's like, yeah, after a while, Disney's got so much say in your product, you probably don't care. You're probably like, whatever. I mean, look how there was so many directors that they churned through in Star Wars. They were always getting a director and they getting a writer, and all of a sudden, a couple of months later, it's like, oh, we got a new director and we got a new writer. It was a turning door,
Yeah,
because who has all control? The studios.
yeah,
People who do not know anything about filmmaking, about being that magician, you know, to and this is probably why Christopher Nolan will never do any of those studio films. He'll keep on doing the films separate from the studios. The studios will grab his film for distribution, no doubt, because it
right,
makes money. And why does it make money? Because he is that magician.
right.
Every time you go see one of his films, even if you don't understand what's going on, you are visually awed. You are like, wow, I believe what I'm seeing on screen could happen.
Hmm.
And that's all you need, is to make someone in that theater believe that this could happen, and you can astound them, and they're going to watch your film, and then they're going to buy your DVD, or buy your digital thing and watch it again.
Right.
But if you keep on turning out subpar stuff where everyone knows what's going on, let me just pop in Toy Story and watch that again,
Right.
because we've had great stories and great looking CGI and animated films. We don't need any more completely of that.
No. Yeah, I don't watch all those CGI, the Marvel. I don't watch all that stuff. I want to watch a good movie with people. You know. Yeah, I don't know
But
if we
even
did
then,
it.
it's like, go back to what, 2000. That's 25 years ago. You had Sam Raimi, great visual director. He
Right.
used to do horror films. He did
Right.
the three Spider-Man movies. And people loved that. They made so much money off those movies. And yeah, he used CGI every now and then, but a lot of times it's Tobey Maguire in a suit
Right.
swinging on something, and they're
Right.
filming him doing that swinging motion.
Right.
So it's like human motions, human limbs moving, and even though it's not as fantastical of a shot that you can get with just doing everything CG, because you can put that camera anywhere, you can move anywhere, you can do anything with CG,
Mhm.
but you lose that human connection and that specter of awe where it's like our eyes can tell that someone's actually doing something.
Mhm.
You know, that
Well,
stunt
people need.
man is doing something. That
Right.
person is actually doing something. So I respect that. I'm in awe of that. You
Well,
know,
that's where people need to quit going to these movies, and they'll stop making them. But until they stop going to the movies, it's like a drug dealer. You know, the people have control of everything. Who's elected? What movies are made? But no one wants to do it. And it just that's what it boils down to.
and the
Is
sad
we
thing
keep going,
is
so they keep
even
making.
if people don't go to the theaters, you know, they still make money or they push even because of like these pre-sales where it's like there's all these streaming services. Someone's going to spend money on that streaming service for that movie to go there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. People need to stop supporting these things, which they're not going to do. I don't. We pay for no. I don't think. Yeah, I pay for HBO Max for Audrey. Other than that, we don't pay for anything. But people just need to stop watching it, and they'll quit making it. You know.
Oh
But
yeah,
I'm saying,
and look at, you know, I mean, even on HBO Max, you know, there's superheroes. You have a series with Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Very
right?
little CGI. Show was amazing. It's like they if they would have made a movie about that and did it that way, they'd make movies would make money.
Right.
But these corporations, they're
But they're there to make money. They're beholden to the shareholder. That's what they do. It's a business. Movie making is not a business. Filmmaking, it's about storytelling. Then you partner the two. You we can't make a movie and it could be the greatest thing on earth, but unless we have distribution, no one's going to see it. So
yeah,
you have
and the
to.
corporations own all the distribution nowadays. So
So what I need to do is start my own independent theater chain, and I don't know where the hell I'm going to get the money, but that's what it needs. Watch the movie Sneakers. You who control the information have power. That's what it is. It's a power grab. It's everywhere. I don't want to get on a rant, but it's just
no
they do
rant.
what they.
So I
Hmm?
so I rant. So I seem sane, right?
It's what's crazy. I mean, I work for an airline, but I'm not an environmentalist. But it's it's the world we live in. It's the card we're dealt. We all say global warming. Go back to horse and buggy. Create sailing ships. Go back to the. That's how you fix things. Making these hard decisions, but no one wants to make the hard decisions. Stop going to the movie. Well, I need something to do. Well, read a book. You know,
Yeah.
why do you go to McDonald's? I don't have enough time. Well, make time. Cook at home.
I mean,
There's
that's the good thing with the streaming services because most of the people nowadays they're going back and they're watching the older films.
right,
Kind of like what we're doing in this series. We keep on talking
right.
about older films, and it's like, okay, why is that? Because
Because they're
nowadays they
better.
don't make anything
Yeah,
like
they
that.
don't make the good stuff. We
Everything,
talk
if we talk about a movie, if we were doing Snow White, we probably won't be recommending it.
right,
It's like we would just be spending, the 30, 45 minutes just bashing the film. And it's like, yeah, yeah, we don't want to do that. We want to talk about things that people would like. And
right. The
you
art
have
of
to go
filmmaking.
back and
It's
pass.
that it's an art. It's a it's passionate. It's being true to the art of filmmaking. People talking, not people swinging on imaginary. With the red. With the dots on there. It's just I don't know.
But even with that, there is a way to do it, but you have to be creative.
Right,
Be magicians, be illusionists,
right,
get that magic back. Be more like Christopher Nolan and less like director, producer X from Disney.
right,
Just random person who's getting a paycheck. Be
right,
plan.
right.
Work hard, work hard, work hard,
Yeah,
and
and don't be
it'll be worth the payoff.
right. Worth the payoff.
All right, we'll end it there. It was
Look
good
at
to be
that's crazy,
back.
Dave. There's that the ceiling. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, we'll fix
Just
it in
like my
post,
hand.
right?
Huh?
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, fix it in post. Look, it's crazy, right?
Well, I got my light set up, so it's like, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, we're having trouble with our internet service here. I won't recommend the. I won't. We'll say the name of the alphabet. A B C D E F. Yeah, this it's
T.
terrible.
T. I mean, it was better today than it was, several weeks ago. So, hit
Right.
and miss.
Hit and miss.
And make sure you catch us up on Spotify. Leave us a comment of the subject you want us to talk about, a movie we'll talk about. Hopefully, we'll be back next week with a movie recommendation.
Maybe a boxing movie.
Maybe a boxing movie. We're
Or
doing a
maybe a
lot of
boxing.
boxing interviews. Maybe we'll post the boxing interviews up on B-roll. You
Right.
know, um,
We
and
have
yeah, we'll see. Make sure you check us out. Just like and subscribe us, and we'll be back next week.
back next week. Bye.
Bye.